Hello, Mr. Adrian Hinds. Welcome
Hello.
to your week show. Happy to see you again.
Same here, Marcia. Hello. Good night to everybody, the loyal opposition. Special shout out to Vihoy. We go way back from St. Thomas people. Shout out to Cami, who's always saying hello to me when they come online in the chat. Square Four, who's always tagging me on questions back and forth. Good interactions. And everybody else. Good night.
Yes, yes. Good night. Good night. Good night.
I
It's a
completed
pleasure to
the
have you. And I want to let you
Republic. Yeah.
go right ahead, Mr. Hinds. I did I cut you off? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You go ahead and say it and
Right. I
do
wanted to
your
say to you because you're
introduction.
not in Barbados and you might not get the great compliments. Wherever I go, people say, "Oh, they learned so much from you. They realize the power that the prime minister had. They didn't realize how much power, that she had, and versus even Trump. That the mechanism around Trump, to keep it in check, they're stronger than the ones here to keep
Yeah,
this prime minister in check. They're learning, and I want
yeah,
to say to you, thank you for that. But go right ahead, sir.
appreciate it. And as long as they keep asking questions, there are answers. I am more than happy to ask these questions because this all came about because of a lot of conversations that had me puzzled. I asked questions, there was no clarity, so I thought I had to do the research myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very confident in my take on this. There are people who are academics that have helped me to come to this realization that this
Mm-hmm.
is what we have. So the more people come up to speed on it, the better, more confidence they would have to challenge
Mm-hmm.
this government, and any government that comes into a Westminster system, it needs to be done.
Yes.
So tonight, I really want to deal with a couple of things that, as I make my rounds on social media, someone referred to me as a troll. I go around on Facebook pages and make comments. And hey, that's what I do. If you don't like it, just block me. It doesn't matter to me. I learn a lot, and I think I have a lot of information that I can put out there. And if I'm wrong, challenge me on it, and I can take on facts from elsewhere. So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot, and it seems to be coming from a set of people that I refer to as influencers and these digital creators. I don't know if they're getting paid or whatever, but there seems to be a concentration or settling on this idea that you must have a solution if you're going to complain. And I'm here to say that having a solution to a problem is not a requirement to complain, right? And recognizing and articulating the problem is the first step in solving that problem. So that expecting people to remain silent unless they have a solution assumes that only those with answers deserve to be heard, when in reality, collective discussion is often how solutions emerge. Now, in Barbados, in my walking around and looking around and engaging people who have these ideas, I think it is more sinister than that in Barbados. I think this demand that people put up a solution if they're going to complain, um, uh, that they are hoping that nothing of worth is forthcoming. And at that point, they will tell you to shut up, because that's really, I think, really what they want you to do. They want silence. They don't want you to complain, because in their view, they might be looking, somebody that they support look bad to be complaining, right? I don't think they're really interested in solutions. So again, I say a solution to a problem is not a requirement to complain. Barbadians continue. So those people who feel like, feel that if they don't have a solution, then they can't complain about something that's really bothering.
Hello, can we hear him, or is it my
About and complain
okay.
about often, right? So another topic that hit on me was that I heard a lot is crying political. A lot of people in Barbados, as they address what is happening in the country with crime, they often offer a disclaimer that this is not be or do, this is not political, right? And I wish to dissuade people from that. Your life is about politics, whether you like it or not. It is about politics. How much money you keep in your pocket, you know, how expensive it is to drive your vehicle, how expensive is your electricity bill. All of that comes down to politics and decisions made at the political level. So people, it may be uncomfortable, but it is more uncomfortable if you don't pay attention to these things and hold the people who make these decisions that affect your pockets to account for their decisions, right? And I also want to just state a couple of reasons as to why, and anybody can Google this. Is crime political? Yes, it is, right? It's from a public safety and fair issue. A guy who's a law-abiding citizen with all this crime going around might think that it is time for him to arm himself, and that could lead to him taking matters into his own hands. And then if that's one person, what if multiple people do that, right? That could lead to unnecessary anarchy and violence being exacerbated because crime is happening. This person fears that the government isn't doing anything, the government being the police and whoever else is charged with, to serve and to protect and for the good order and peace and governance of the country. They're not doing that. So maybe I should do something to help protect myself. And that is a problem and can be a problem. At the very level, it would tell you that it is government's responsibility to keep crime in check. So because, crime directly impacts people's lives. And it becomes a key issue in political campaigns. We saw this. We had a government that was in opposition complain about the government of the day not doing enough, right? And now they're in government. Yeah, the party that was in that's now out is doing the same thing. So it is political, whether we like it or not. Legislative debates, public policy decisions, all of these things matters and makes crime political. So we need to accept it for what it is and deal with it as it is, right? So so the topic of the week, I know you mentioned that we shouldn't make this thing about the government and stuff like that, but the topic of the week, which really has been the topic for the year since 2018, with the exception of the COVID lockdown years, is crime, whether we like it or not. Crime and violence, as measured by the number of persons unlawfully killed in Barbados. Of the most recent, the recent most killing and unsettling one to date, let me say that as we continue on our unfortunate trek into violent murderous purgatory, I extend my deepest condolences to Shonathan's family and friends on such a senseless killing of a promising young man whom they love dearly. I had sent you two YouTubes, Marcia. If Dave is around, he can put up the first one.
Yeah, Dave will put up the first one. Thank you.
Right. Before he starts it though, I just want to say this is a speech. I know his face is on there, but it's really Mia Motley making a speech in Parliament back in 2007 or 2008, I believe, where she, the context for this was that there were 14 alleged illegal immigrants working on the Kensington Oval redevelopment with regards to the first World Cup, the first one-day World Cup back in 2007. It was alleged that they were illegal. It was alleged that they were living in poor conditions and that their travel documents were seized to keep them working. And I don't know, I think there were calls for the Attorney General to do something about it. And I think Motley, in her defense, she was the Attorney General at the time, in her defense, made this speech in Parliament. It was a passionate speech about the importance of impartiality and preeminence of law, that from the highest to the lowest should be held to account. And my question is this a practice in reality in Barbados? So Dave, if you can start the video.
Order. That your law is not my law will get worse if people do not have the confidence that the system is transparent, that the system is fair, and that the system requires accountability irrespective of who you are, from the head in this country to the lowest worker in this country. And I am clear on this issue, Mr. Speaker, and it is a matter that will go with me whether I am a member of a political party or whether I am an ordinary citizen of Barbados. The phenomenon that has attacked Jamaica in relation to the disrespect for institutions can be a fate which can befall us if we do not start to ensure in this country that if a person has done something wrong, even if there is a case that they may be innocent or that for mercy, they must face the courts of law unless the director of public prosecution is satisfied that there is no case. Absolutely the answer.
So there you have it. The phenomenon that has attacked Jamaica with respect to the with regards to the disrespect for institutions, maybe a fate that befalls us. And my question is, are we willing to say, unfortunately, that fate has befallen us? And I'm saying this because I think we have reached a stage where murders per capita in Barbados are as high or even higher than that in Jamaica. I believe that we are there.
I must correct you. I must not correct you. Must agree with you that
Right.
I did the math, and I know up until about mid-February, Barbados, in terms of rate, was higher than Jamaica. That's a fact, Mr. Hinds. That's a fact.
Right. So here it is in 2007, a prediction was made, and I think that prediction has come true. And the question is, I think we've answered it. Is that phenomenon now in Barbados? I think it is, right? And another question is, what is Jamaica doing about its crime? And are we doing anything similar to what they're doing about their crime? Is the Jamaican government having its social media influencers float the idea that bad parenting is the cause? Is the Jamaican government putting their hands up in the air while telling Jamaicans to pray, to say something if they see something, that they cannot do it alone? Are they paying gangsters? Are they meeting with gangsters after, allegedly, the payment plan has not worked? In essence, what is the Jamaican government doing? And is there anything that we can learn from them as they combat their crime that we can bring to bear on Barbados, other than what we're currently seeing right now? So those are questions that people will have to answer. I'm not going to attempt to answer them. One thing, though, I would say for Jamaica is that the Prime Minister has decided that this gang issue he's referring to it as gang terrorism, and that allows him to have or to bring into play legislation that deals more harshly with this stuff. And the Secretary of State in the United States to agree that is the approach. So they're going to get some assistance from that. And hopefully he's not only doing it for Jamaica, but he's doing it for the entire Caribbean. So I say this to say that rather than play games, which I think is being played with all this thing about talking about parenting, and causes, and not looking for real solutions, that this is what we need to do. And we all know this. I hear Barbadians on brass tacks and other forums telling the government what needs to be done. I hear people talking, they're not hearing anything about gun interdiction. They're not hearing that. And here it is, the Jamaicans see that as one of the pillars of their approach to fighting crime. But we are not hearing it. Maybe the government of Barbados is doing it, but not telling the people. I don't know. But I think that is important. And I think that whatever we need to do to get the police to up their game, literally, not just stating it, but actually doing it. Because I think that these people who are committing these crimes, demographic, is beyond parenting. I really think so. Right. And when you are no longer a child to be influenced and to be chastised by a parent, and you still want to do wrong, that's where the police comes in. Right. So I think that's the approach that we need to take with that. I just did it. I don't see the need to have a solution if I'm complaining, but I give one nevertheless. Right. My next issue is the whole town issue. Right. Dave, if you can load that second YouTube, right? Before you play, I just want to make a comment about it. This YouTube that Dave is going to load deals with Mayor Motley speaking to the elders of the Barbados Labour Party just before the election in 2018, right? And in there, she made reference about not being able to right 350 years of wrong in 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. And then in 2025, she makes a statement that gave me pause as to what she really means. So I'll get into that, but play the, it's a very short video, just play so you know people can have a record that she actually said it and not me, saying that she said
Because
something.
this party is not a fly-by-night institution. This is a party of 80 years. This is a party whose tradition is strong, but more importantly, whose philosophy has been constant. This is a party that recognizes that we cannot turn around 350 years of wrong in 10 years or 20 years or 30 or 40, that this is a continuum. This is a...
Good. So here it is. Now, you can take that in several ways. One of the ways I think she meant it was that as socialist Democrats, which all of our politicians are, that at core, a socialist Democrat seeks to bring the disenfranchised up through taxes of the rich, right? And you can't do that in one fell swoop, because obviously the rich will complain that you're taking all their money away, but you do it through taxes, piecemeal, and bring people up and bring people up. And I believe that that process have gone slow, if not being stymied, right? That after 60 or close to 60 years of independence, that the level of progression towards enfranchisement is way too slow. Way too slow. And I don't think I'm alone in believing that. And I think that's part of the frustration that young Barbadians are feeling. If you go back to the 1985 Commission on Law and Order, there were 86 suggestions. And I don't know that any of those suggestions were ever acted upon. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. But we hear that the Democratic Labour Party was supposed to come up with a new commission on crime. And then we had some media guy walking around with a camera and microphone in people's faces, asking them about the same things. And pretty much I listened to the first or 2 or 3 videos of his work, and the same things that were said in the walkabout of the Law and Order Commission back in 1985 were being said by the same people in these videos in 2025. We are not learning anything. We are not doing anything, right? So she said, we understand that the party said, that they cannot write 350 years of wrong in 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. That's 2008. And that's in relation to people saying that the progress towards enfranchisement is too slow or stymied. So she's saying, hey, we're doing it, but I still think right. So in 2025, in relation to people saying save our heritage with regards to Whole Town and the garrison and all these places that she wants to rubbish so that she can put up hotels, she's saying you cannot live in the past and build for the future, right? So 350 years in wrong can be slowed, if not stalled, in bringing people to a place of enfranchisement, right? And here it is now with preserving the history of the country. She's ready to get rid of that, right? Because we need to progress. What don't the people of Barbados need to progress too? You can't have it both ways, right? You can't have it both ways. And just to speak to this issue of not living in the past to build the future, I use a couple statements from a professor in America called Eddie Glaude. He's usually on MSNBC, and he holds people to account for not addressing the core issue of the issues in America, which is race, right? He has a couple of things. He says, confronting and understanding history is essential for creating a just and equitable society. He says history is not just about the past, it's about the stories we tell ourselves to justify the present. He says we have to tell ourselves a different story about who we are to release ourselves from a different future. Acknowledging and learning from the past is not a hindrance, but a necessity to build a better future. Ignoring historical context may perpetuate existing injustices, whereas confronting them can lead to meaningful change. Eddie Glaude Jr. So I say, I think a lot of what is happening is more from a self-interested perspective, that her statements are maybe contextual to an event, but when you match them together across other speeches, you see that there is a conflict, as I said, with that 2008 and 2025, so we have to, as a people, never forget what's in it for us as you deal with these people. Everybody's going to put forward their perspective from their viewpoint, and you can't. It is wrong for you to take on their perspective at the expense of yourself. And I say this because I remember this. I used to go to a New Testament church, and there was this old lady who loved her pastor, and she took all of her meeting money to redo her house and gave it to the pastor, right? And her house rotted down, and he never did anything about it, right? There are a lot of not as realistic as that, but there are a lot of Barbadians who do that. They take on other people's ideas at the expense of themselves, and we need to stop. We need to ask these people, what's in it for me? Because putting our local interests on pause for, as they say, the national need has to stop. If you can't do both, then we need to separate you from being a parliamentary representative and minister at the same time. But I digress on that. Also, I want to touch on the Afrexim Bank. The Afrexim Bank is a vexing issue in Barbados. But I want to ask if there's a Chinese influence or connection. Is there a possible conduit for China's Belt and Road Initiative? I have 7 questions or 8 questions that people can consider as they.
Can I let you know that technically, you have 5 minutes left, right? But
okay.
In your segment, but you're onto something very, very important there. Okay, but
I'm just asking questions here. I'm not going to delve into anything because you mentioned you had an article that showed that who the directors are and where they're from. So I asked the question: is Miss Yuan associated with the Chinese Development Bank? No, sorry. I'll start with what is a Class C director of Afrexim Bank? Who is Miss Yuan? You mentioned her name. That's where I got it from. Is she a Class C director of Afrexim Bank? I'm asking questions that have answers to them. Is Miss Yuan associated with the Chinese Development Bank? Is there a relationship between the Afrexim Bank and the Chinese Development Bank? Are there any loans? Who owns the Chinese Development Bank? Is there any relationship between the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative and the Afrexim Bank? Is it possible that the U.S. under Trump may view this relationship between Barbados, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative via Afrexim Bank in a good or bad light? I leave that. I too join with Barbadians in their view that the land giveaway and tax exemption to this bank, all for the promise of trade benefits in the future, is akin to buying a pig in a poke. We continue to have significant trade imbalances with nearly all large economies that we trade with. I see no reason why this will not be the same with trading with this bank. Remember, folks, this is not a development bank. It is not a development bank. And if anybody has questions, I can give them more information as to why that is the case, because it really is. The last thing is VisaGate and the Cuban Missile Brigade. From what I understand, this policy is all about Rubio's, and his belief is driven by deep-seated dislike for the communist regime, given his Cuban background. People are saying that Motley's speech in Parliament, as she addressed the issue, was a tough stance. I do not see that. I saw it as a very diplomatic approach. She says she's not going to shout across the seas, and that if she loses her visa, so be it. That is as civil and as diplomatic as you can get. There's nothing tough about that. If you want tough, you look at what Rowley said, right? And how he said it. He was very animated, but people dismissed him because he's a retiring prime minister at the time he said it. So they were like, he ain't gonna fear nothing. But that's not the case, right? And then you have Gonzalez and how he approached it. He said he wouldn't do it. He got 21 people that will die if the Cubans leave. So he ain't doing it, right? That's direct. And then you have the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who stood next to Rubio and told them that the Cubans are doing a fantastic job in Jamaica and that he pays the same rate to them as he does doctors in Jamaica. And Rubio responded by saying he will take a second and fresh look at how Jamaica is doing it, that this is more about other countries, not necessarily Jamaica. He was very apologetic about it not including Jamaica, and that he's going to take a look at it. But he said, here's what he said. He said that Jamaica, the issue is with other countries who pays the Cuban government, and that the Cuban government then pays very little or nothing to the doctors. And the question is, because I walked away believing that the the governments in the Caribbean pays the doctors in their country with a check in their hands, right? So I'm expecting that when Rubio does his due diligence, he's going to realize that we do the same. That, yeah, we may pay the going rate for a Barbadian doctor to the Cuban doctor, but the money actually goes to Cuba, the Cuban government, right?
Correct.
And then the question is, are the Cuban government paying these people what they're supposed to be getting, or what we had expected them to get? That I tell you, the question that is no. So we'll see about that. So that ends my piece on that. Anybody has any questions? I just rushed along there because I thought, it was
but no, but I want to say to you, I would love for you to, I know it's Sundays and Fridays, but if you can spare us any other time, you just link me, and because we need to explore especially this connection with China, with the Chinese, because there is a Chinese Exim Bank that and they are the one funding Sam Lord's Castle Hotel. The Afrexim Bank is building a hotel. Actually, as Mr. Murray is going to come in and talk about these two. They're 12 stories. It seemed like it's more of a hotel than it is a bank. So I'm all like ready to go, but we have such a tight thing. But listen, if we have any time, stay close. I would love for you to come back on a little later after 9, if you can.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah.
And we're going to look, because last thing I'll tell you about it, and I'm just looking if they have any. The development idea, correct, Margaret, is coming from the government. They are pushing this development bank, but it is not. And I want to say that a lot of my viewers are sending me the information about the fact, Adrian, and I think you know the answers to your question, that $1 billion was put into the Afrexim Bank by the Chinese Exim Bank.
Yeah. I'm telling you,
it is. Listen, you got to come back on, because we need to look at this thing for what it is. And I don't know if Dave can put up. I'll do that. So.
No, I'm good. I'm going to be on my computer.
You can just stay in the studio. Just stay in the studio, please, if you can.
I can
okay.
Do that.
All right. Thank you so much, Adrian. Oh boy, you're bringing such a great freshness. Thank you so much.
All right. So my interpretation of thanks, Marcia. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Cognitive dissonance. If I were to apply that to Barbados, I share a different view than the caller who thinks that it is a concern that people are making it. In politics, people do that all the time. They make a decision on who to vote for, and then that person doesn't turn out to be so well, and they stick with them. That's why incumbents usually get into power the second time around. People stick with them because they don't want to be wrong, so they go with that. I am going to tell Barbadians this: if you want to have change, you must give your 2 cents worth. You got to get out there. You gotta show the effort. You got to demonstrate that you are invested in change that is to benefit you. If you don't do it, it is likely that nobody's going to come to your rescue. As a matter of fact, I don't think anybody is. You got to be the change that you want to see. Show up in your numbers.